fifth inning. The Yankees, as they ought to be, were well on top, murdering the Red Sox, to the point where, and you know how in sports, especially baseball, which is a fairly leisurely presentation, the camera pans around and it fixes on individual members of the crowd here and there. And Stephen has a great seat, and they were showing him watching the game. And then by about the fifth inning, the announcer said, "Oh dear, even Stephen King's given up. He's reading his book." And there was this big close-up of him reading Tripwire. And in fact, that shot appeared in the Boston papers the next morning as the symbol of the Red Sox hopelessness, which thrilled me on so many levels.
Perfect moment for you. I want to ask you, I've just realised that both Jet Reacher and Lincoln Rhyme first debuted in the world at the same time, 1997. I just wonder, I thought I won't ask that naff question about which one of them will win in a fight, but do you think Lincoln Rhyme and Jet Reacher, would they like each other? Would they get on?
Well, that's an interesting question. Well, Lincoln Rhyme is for those of you who aren't familiar, the quadriplegic, or I think you say tetraplegic here more commonly, don't you? Anyway, paralyzed from the neck down. And he was actually inspired by a fellow countryman, Sherlock Holmes, to some extent. I mean, Rex Stout and Nero Wolfe as well, the more armchair detective. And what I wanted to do was create a cerebral hero. Someone who didn't karate kick or couldn't shoot straight. I once said I wanted to create a mental hero, which in America means one thing, and here apparently mental means something entirely different. But he's because of his unique condition, he's a bit of a curmudgeon and not really the nicest guy to have a pint with. Actually, Ian Rankin and I were talking about something very similar. You know, Rebus. And Rebus could be a bit contrary from time to time. We love him. He's one of my favorite characters. But we thought Lincoln and Rebus might get along well because they kind of grumbled together. So I don't know about Jack and Lincoln. They might very well.
I always took Lincoln Rhyme to be a metaphor for the mental process, as you say. The brain. When I was a little kid, there was a comic called The Eagle, and it had this character that had evolved down to nothing but a brain that kind of floated around on a dish like a flying saucer. But I think the more interesting question is, why do so many contemporary leading characters begin with the letter R? Rebus, Rhyme, Reacher, Jack Bryan, Rambo. What is it about R that is particularly appealing? It's the same with, I've noticed women authors who use initials to disguise gender in the author name. The middle initial is predominantly J.
J, you're right.
So have you got any answers to these?
Well, it should be any university professors here, and students need dissertation work. I think that would be may I jump in and ask Lee a question, if you don't mind? This is something I'm quite curious about. We were talking earlier about writing in a slightly different day and age from the time in which we got started. I have tended to make my chapters shorter, use more staccato words, make shorter paragraphs, all kind of in line with what you were kind of talking about earlier, with dealing with maybe a different reading audience. Is that something you've ever thought of, or?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, because I came up through the world of television where we had two things happened with television. First of all, it used to be a series activity. In other words, you would sit and watch your program, paying it complete attention, and that kind of dissipated to the point where most people watch their programs now, whatever their favorite show is, they watch it while they're cooking their dinner, while they're on the phone with their mother. And so you have to approach information delivery in a different way because you know they're distracted. And another thing happened in television that nobody had in 1980 and everybody had in 1990 that radically changed content and delivery. And you're all wondering, this is usually an example I give about how to create suspense. Now you're wondering what it was. What did nobody have in 1980 that everybody had in 1990? And the answer is a remote control. And so whereas previously you could be pretty sure up to about 1980 people would have to get their ass off the sofa to go and change the channel, so they probably wouldn't. By 1990 it was dead easy to change the channel, so you had to really focus on that. And sure, so as things move on, you do change, and I have definitely been aware of that, although it is largely an illusion for me, because I've always used a lot of what you call page breaks, where the chapter is subdivided.
Right.
And in the printed book there's a gap of a line, and then the start of the next section is bolded, so it's like a sub-chapter. And so what I tend to do now is I make more of those sub-chapters